talking about the difficulty of licensing the sort of bigger end of the punk world.
That's right, and there's a little anecdote I could throw in. So my original first choice was 12XU by Wire, and I got hold of Colin Newman's email address, and I wrote to him, so Colin Newman, singer, songwriter of Wire and that song, and said, hey, I've been listening to your music since I was 9 and I'm making this film, and I explained the whole thing. And he got back and he wrote the rudest email I think I've ever seen.
What was the rudest thing he wrote?
Well, it was just this idea. He was sort of suggesting that I was just trying to leech his power to make my shit film look better, basically. I mean, honestly, it was really unpleasant, and I binned it. I wish I hadn't, because it would have been quite a good one for memoirs. But
has there done anything any good since 1979?
Yeah, so I thought, screw you, Colin Newman. I went to my second choice, which was the Love Like Anthrax, which made much more sense anyway.
Because there's a rabies anthrax.
Yeah, there was a connection there. Yeah, so Hugh Ashton, the producer of Rabies, played us Love Like Anthrax before we started recording, and told us how this track was broken down and the layering of the voices, and that the song didn't have to have these verse chorus shape. It could have noise for a minute and then you start the song. So an amazing music lesson, which stays with me to this day. So yeah, that song was embedded in me quite young. And then I don't remember exactly how we got in touch with Gang of Four and Andy Gill, but he actually rang me. So I had this call. I was like, "Oh, it's Andy. Andy from Gang of Four." Oh my god! Let me sit down. And he was just immediately really interested and up for it. Like, loved the idea. But what he was trying to do was, there was some sort of dispute around the EP and the album version or something. There was some money that wasn't quite resolved or something. So his suggestion was, look, you've only got a certain amount of money, I understand that's fine. Why don't you just give that to me, and you come and work with me in the studio and we'll remix it together, and you can go on drums. I was like, wow. Gosh. And that was like planned. And it was his way of getting the money directly, otherwise he'd only take 25%, of course. But then in the interim, we arranged for him to come and do the performance you see there, and then 3 weeks after that, he died. So the whole project, that side didn't work out, but you know, he died, I was still alive.
What a way to go, though, the fact that was his last performance.
Yeah.
What a great, I mean, I have to say, what a great thing to happen in a way, because we're all going to go. And he was great. That was great, watching him do that, just to see, because I was there with the sound of that Love Like Anthrax guitar, seeing him turning all the things and the switches and then throwing it on the floor. I was straight there, like, that's how he did it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it was interesting because because I haven't understood that it's a choreographed thing. So he does a certain thing there, he takes off, he does a certain thing here, he does slaps in, and so that he can perform it the same way each time. But what he needs is like a massive stack of amps, and Tile Yard in North London, where we filmed it, that was the biggest amps they had. So he was a bit disappointed when he turned it up. You know, that's the biggest ones you've got. And you can see there's a frustration in his performance as well, because he can't do what.
But that probably gives it the edge.
Yeah.
Fully, you then did that Look Like COVID-19, and they think Andy Gill was one of the first people to actually die from COVID as well.
Yes, yeah.
They toured China, didn't they? Just
yeah, they were touring near
Yeah.
Wuhan, and it was they didn't know at the time, but then that then triggered his wife Catherine Mayer to like really look into what's going on with the services and the information about COVID, and she's got really involved in that side of things. It was kind of really. I mean, that time was really odd, wasn't it? Anyway, and then I had. It was like once we had that information, then I had this guitar in the corner of my room. I was like,
these
do I
DNA
need to
on it.
sanitize it or something? career?
In terms, I mean, I suppose that's like a personal, it's in that anecdote, but in the terms of the recreations you have, the kids and everything, and we were just talking about how, you know, you've got your mother in it as well, and there's a lot of emotions kind of running raw because it's your life, essentially. Has that changed the way you've approached making films or music, in a sense, just seeing how personal it can get?
It's too soon to say, actually. It's still a bit close. I mean, I can sort of watch it objectively now, just about, but it still gets me stuff in there. And I don't really know what I've done, and it's been difficult for my family to have this guy doing all this stuff around. I don't know if my brother's seen the film yet.
That was one of the things I was going to say.
Yes.
Has he seen it?
I don't know.
Does he know? He obviously knows you're making.
Yeah, and I could probably the question in your mind is, why is he not in the film?
Yeah.
Right? You're probably thinking, did he die? Or no, he was going through a terrible divorce, and he just didn't want to think about that period of time, because I think in his mind the divorce, his own divorce, was really difficult. So yeah, we were in some conflict again around that, because I was like, how am I going to make this film without one of the key member of the band essentially not in it? But then someone reminded me that all great rock documentaries or mockumentaries, there's always someone who's not in it. So it's just classic musical differences stuff in a way. But I'm glad to say he's much better now. He's really happy. So I think he will. If he's not seen it, he'll get around to seeing it.
Yeah, brilliant. And it seems like the film's got a pretty enduring life already, even though it's too soon for certain things, because it did, LFF would be 2 years ago now.
Yeah, during lockdown, so that was like a sort of remote screening.
And when it was all online. Yeah. So what's the life of it now? This is a tour, isn't it?
We've got a week tour. So next up, so we started. There was a preview screening in Newcastle at Tyneside, which was great, and then London, where we had the 4 people in, which was fine actually, because the two that had comps only were film students. So when it came to the Q&A, I said, right, you're on camera, you're on.
Yeah. You're on Facebook Live.
So basically, we did a little masterclass.
Oh, that's great.
And it was great. We ended up in the Wetherspoons and had a good time. And then Brighton, which was pretty busy, but that's sort of my own crowd from an earlier incarnation.
Yeah.
And then Cambridge last night, which was interesting. Very different demographic. That was majority women over the age of 75.
Wow.
But from the kind of Greenham hippie punk world.
Yeah.
So they got it from another angle.
Yeah, that's good.
And really good questions. I really no mapping about. And then here we are now. And then it goes to Hastings, which I think will be quite busy, because do you know Andrew Cotting, filmmaker?
It rings it, yeah.
Oh, you should get him up.
Yeah.
Oh, he's brilliant.
When's that?
26th.
26th, okay.
Of this month.
I'll alert a few people to that.
Yeah, and then there's Reading, which is my current hometown, on 5th of December.
But it is hard. I mean, how do you promote these things?
Yeah.
I mean, as a small independent,
Well, we're lucky to have this guy Johnny Toll, who's on board, and so Ashley, the producer that you'd probably assume I hate, but I don't. Got Johnny on board, and they got a little bit more money from Screen Scotland to support the tour. So we've had a bit of money to do that, and I mean really not much, so we can't pay for big advertising things, but we can get.
That's the issue. It's getting it out there. I know there's like social media, but it's getting it out there and getting people to come, isn't it? Yeah.
But I think it's a slow burner. I think, the Velvet Underground, 100 people bought the album, but they all, and I think this is one of those things, because there's so much in there, and already there's things cross-referenced, and there's prescient things, there's stuff in there that is like, wow, that, sound for the future. The fact that it's sound for the future, not music for the future, so it's sound, and there's something to do with hauntology in there, cutting through things. So there's already a lot going on, and I've got the I'm watching it. I really enjoyed it. I like the collage aspect of it, and I feel that this is one of those things that can only build. The more people that see it, the more people who are going to be
appreciate it.
Oh, check this film out. It's really interesting. You know, it's kind of atomised, and then it comes together, and you know, there's a lot going on in there. And I think it's going to be a cult film.
I mean,
and it's going to grow.
Yeah, I was.
It's not a bad thing, though, is it?
No, well, that's the stuff I like.
Yeah.
Who wants to be mainstream?
And I was mindful of
that.
you know, our thinking, because I was thinking, okay, so we've got this tape from 40 years ago and doing something now.
Yeah.
In 40 years' time, people realise that the people that made that were thinking about 40 years ahead. They weren't thinking about what's going to be cool in fall. You know? They're thinking much longer term.
It's funny you mentioned the Velvets, because we had that documentary they did like last year.
Oh yeah.
And it, in terms of slow burn, it was very much like, oh well, we'll show it, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, we stopped showing it, and I said, "Are you showing that Velvets?"
Yeah.
But it had the same sort of idea. It was made almost as a pop art film if you had seen it when the Velvets were still around, whereas I think with yours having the punk attitude, but all these just different modes of film and textures of film in it as well, like you would, like a start-up kind of scrappy band, you know, they would have in their arsenal just to make do and to just get by. So yeah, I can put those two together.
Yeah, and I think also having the kids in it is good, because obviously you were kids, so they had to be in there. But it's planting the seed in, you know, we were old, but they're young, so it's the next few generations on, isn't it? You know, and it's planted that seed there that I don't know whether they were aware of the music or what they made of what you did and what you were trying to achieve. But I get the impression that they learned. I don't want to be patronising, but it felt like that they were like fascinated, you know, watching you do the tape with the pencil and all that. You know, it's this stuff that from the past. What's that?
Yeah,
suddenly it comes alive.
It's a beautiful. I mean, I enjoyed that so much, and it's you know, because I'm not a teacher, I'm not their parents.
Well, you are.
Well, I mean,
you know, that's the thing.
Mentor in the broader sense, but you know, I'm not literally their school teacher or their parents. So suddenly they were in this situation where they had more freedom, and what I try and do is create. Well, you think create like benign chaos, but give guidance, and just let. So many of the ideas in that film are from them, they're not from me. I just enabled what I was able to, you know, I enabled them to feel they could bring ideas forward and not be laughed at or considered stupid or something. And we would just take them on board, pretty much, you know. All of that was the problem. We ended up with 600 hours of footage, so because we shot so much, but because we just like included everything. Incorporated, you know, totally about inclusion and
well, it's like I think you were saying as well. It has that real crescendo to, you know, you in the studio in the end with the kids, the paper flying everywhere and it's zooming in and out and all this kind of stuff. That sort of feels personal in a way that it's like it's flying, like it's a tangible thing, and it's like you were saying, it is a timeless thing. Whatever kind of masculine is on it, whenever it's those songs that are still there. But yeah, I suppose, speaking of times, what's next on the timeline? Yeah, I wonder.
We didn't plan that. This is normally you know, the standard Q&A question that you were going to avoid because you thought that's a standard question. And I said, actually, could you ask this, because I'm able to say, normally I can't answer it, and I will say that this film has led to me working in Reading with a charity called Ready Pop. So I'm now doing essentially what you see me doing there, paid, with local kids who are disadvantaged and so on, and they meet up every Fridays, an informal social club, and we make bands, they write songs. So I'm doing that. Plus, it's also complex feelings about this, but I was invited to get involved with a rehab organisation called Grow Change Live. So it's ex-users of substances and so on, over 18. And they're doing a 6-month series of art rehab workshops with print, painting, drama, music, all the rest of it. They said, could you come along and document that and help show what we do. And the weird thing about it is it's on the same street that I lived in Reading. It's just a few doors down. So it's like, this place has drawn me back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm now like turning the camera on them, but it's really even more on myself than that is.
Yeah.
In a way, it's quite.
I think have you got a is it Hex in your t-shirt, the Reading?
The Hex good.
Yeah, the Hex.
Yeah.
You've got a t-shirt on in there. In one of the bits.
Yeah,
when,
yeah,
when
Tony's got
you're
a Hex good
when
t-shirt.
you're young, you got the, and so I know from seeing what you've been doing in the arty side of things that you've been doing an art project with them.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting to see that, and also to know that you've also been 40, 50 years later that you're actually doing something with them.
Yeah.
A creative act, you know. So there's all these, as I mentioned, hauntology. There's lots of connections with things that you see and you think, oh yeah, that's actually years later you're doing something there.
Yeah, no, I'm really interested in that. Another example is probably the book, the Happy Prince book.
Oh yeah.
On the cover there's this illustration of how I have on my arm.
Yeah.
That was my birthday tattoo last year. But that I also turned into a stencil, so I've been spraying that around the subways.
Oh you? Like a tag?
Yeah, and obviously the Happy Prince, Oscar Wilde, and Oscar Wilde has a connection with Reading Jail.
Yeah.
All of that,
Yeah.
so I'm kind of placing these
You are.
things around.
You've just admitted that on Facebook Live, the police will be active now.
Yeah, that's okay, they've already painted over it.
You didn't get the Sleaford muds tattooed, did you?
No, in fact, it's been
that's what I thought was
stressing
going to
out.
happen.
But do I remember Jason Williamson's knobs?
How did they get
Not
involved?
much of a fan.
What? How did they get involved?
They played in Edinburgh, which is where you see me dancing around, and I just went up to them and said, I was aware that they seemed like the band at that time, so it was a few years before, it was 2015 or something, 14 maybe, that they seemed to me like the band that were closest to the energy I remember feeling when I first started listening to, I don't know, Buzzcocks and Clash and things.
Yeah.
So I was drawn to them. And they were incredibly open to it. They're not interested in having any money. They don't give a shit about copyright or licenses or any of that. Literally, just do what you want, film
Hallelujah,
it.
yeah.
That's a proper punky.
It's probably book, yeah, and it's so interesting. You know, Andrew, is it Fern anyway? On a laptop.
Yeah.
Doesn't say a word, does he? And I chatted with him briefly, and he's like incredibly well spoken.
Yeah.
That's why he doesn't open his mouth.
I mean, the band name, the Hippies, I mean, it's quite an unusual name really for a post-punk band, isn't it? I mean, were you being ironic at the time? Or did it ever occur to
That
you?
was the suggestion of our mum, because we were coming up with names like, I don't know why it is, but when you start a band or any kid, it always has food involved in it, doesn't it? So let this be the cornflakes, or I guess it's like the nearest thing. Yeah, Mum said at a certain point, she just said, you know, it'd be a bit more punk to be like, it to be kind of anti.
Yeah.
And she probably, I don't know if she literally said, but probably said something like, it could, like, for us, it could be just the hippies. And I think, you know, we're only kids, so we just thought, oh, great, okay. Yeah, so her influence was light, but lasting.
But was it you that came up then with the name in the end? Or
No, I think it was her
Mum?
suggestion. Yeah.
Someone on the live feed is saying hello spoons.
Oh, that maybe, is that Babel London?
Julia Zimbauer.
Oh, hello spoons.
It's also funny because like rabies, obviously, like I can remember in the 70s how much that was very prevalent at the time, like the scare of rabies. But again, it's like white dog poo. Nobody ever, you don't see it anymore, do you? Anymore?
Talking of spoons, who do you think's in the bag? So please, a rousing round of applause.
The real star.
Pass them around.
Yeah.
Because he needs a hug.
Yeah, I was going to say about the suit. Why choose that picture of McLaren in '72? I think where he got a heavy boy. Because that's an interesting thing to choose.
I don't know if I chose it. I think I just found it, and then it was knocking around, and then when I was in China, you can get like a full grown-up size 3-piece suit made for about 70 quid. I got one made, and the guy, and it was just brilliantly made.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I clicked in my head, I could make one for this Spoons character, and it was the same cost. But in fact, he said it should have cost more because it's incredibly thick work. If you open it up, it's got a waistcoat with little buttons.
I can't see the Vivienne Westwood label as well.
Yeah, and then my mum sent me that Vivienne Westwood label to sew in to bring back McLaren and Westwood. And he's beaten but not battered but not beaten. I would say.
Out.
He's still around.
Yeah, he's still around. And also brought this along. So dear Ian, people often you asked earlier what process did this go through to get going? There was a really key phase where I got sort of fed up with the conventional things of trying to write a screenplay or treatment or use text. And I can't remember exactly how it happened, Ian, but you'd started your MA, I
think it was just before the BA.
Right.
Or the BA was, I was just starting a BA at BCU, Margaret Street, the oldest art school in the country, the oldest purpose-built art school in the country. And I think I was just starting there. And you contacted me.
Yeah, and so I said to Ian, could you do a poster? Let's go
Oh,
DIY, let's go.
Oh, you did the poster?
And he did, he produced 25.
I can't remember. There were two different ones. That's the first one. Because that's the really basic.
Two runs, and it's like this sort of slightly offset screen print. But that then became the font for the film, the poster, everything. So I wanted to bring that just to say, we did it from the kind of DIY up in the end. And that's a very beautiful thing. And I've only got one. The others went to the kids that performed. So they all have copies.
Yeah. I was telling these that the actual title, I did the print, and then I realised I'd missed the title out. And that's why the title's in the middle, all weird and offset, because I'd actually, I'd forgotten to put your title in there. So that weirdly enough ended up looking much better than if I'd planned it.
Happenstance.
So serendipity.
It's the story of the Rubber Soul album cover. It was like, what was it? It was they were projecting it in like the vinyl template fell.
Yeah.
Like, that's great.
That's the one. Yeah.
Right, well, can I say this before we get to the quiz, which is the bit that everyone's been waiting for?
All right.
There's some questions.
Yeah, I was going to open up to the floor.
We've actually loads of
questions. Sorry, I thought we'd done that.
What made you do the rock, Polytechnic rock? I can't remember what the show now was.
Do you
Rock School.
Do you remember Rock School?
Yeah, Rock School.
Well, it's almost verbatim. Obviously, we've tweaked it by adding in some funny forms of music and stuff. But basically, we looked at an episode on YouTube and we broke it down and shot it as close as we could to the feel and style. The idea there is that Generation Riot have not only been on the radio and wiped out the hippies, they've gone on to have their own show.
Really? So that it's actually it's become something.
Yeah, it's like so there's all this stuff about the hippies and all this blah blah blah, but then Generation Riot come along, which I can explain briefly how that happened. But yeah, then the suggestion is that they've then gone on into the future. They were the successful ones, not the hippies. Just
the hippies are a slow burn, though, aren't they? 100 years in the future, the hippies are going to be.
Yeah, and in fact, the Generation Riot came about because just logistically. So originally we were going to have 6 sets of the hippies, and that's what we had for some time. And then it came to a key rehearsal weekend, and there were 3 kids that couldn't make it. And And the line producer said, "Matt, I'm really sorry, we're going to have to let these 3 kids go." And I said, "There's no way. They've done all this work. Let's keep them on board." And so we met up with them in a cafe and said, "How we want to keep working with you? What can we do?" And it was their idea to form a rival band. So that's how it came about. And they came up with the name. Obviously, I helped them write this. We'll just get into some basic riffs and things. But they came up with words and the attitude and what they're wearing.
The drummer with the glasses.
And they loved it. And you can see, especially Holly, the singer. I mean, she just went from being this sort of meek person to being like, in the space of, it was what, like a month or something.
Wow, yeah, she was great.
Did the hippies and Generation Right, did they not know each other? Were in the studio? What was that?
The hippies knew something was up, but we hadn't told them exactly what.
Great. Yeah, I hope that. Yeah.
And also another little point to mention is that we knew before we did the casting that we were going to cast all of them. But from their perspective, they were all going for these 1 of 3 roles.
That's great, because it's the antidote to these things on television, where there's only one that can get through, and it gets paired away, and everyone gets humiliated, and that's an antithesis of that. So it's an antidote to that horrible performing, minions performing for rich people.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of that.
And it was this funny thing with the line producer was emailing them. I said, "Could you email them and say, you have been chosen as Polly," so that they all got the joy of being the chosen one. And then they come back, hang on, this.
I'm not seeing me.
That was quite for their mind.
How are they at rolling joints now then?
Yeah, just a point there that it was all done completely legally above board. Everything was and that was so interesting to go through that process of how do you show a 9-year-old handling tobacco, making a joint, drinking, how do you actually do that and in a way that's permissible, but for an audience you believe they're really doing it. It's so interesting.
So speaking of which, I noticed you've gone out of your way to pixelate bits and pieces here. Can you talk about that, or does that get legal as well?
No, I can definitely talk about that. So let me think. How the pixelation, we needed to do it for something specifically. It was hiding a product, I think.
Advertising.
There was something we had to hide, and we were like, "Oh no, we're going to have this ugly pixel thing." And then with the editor, we just decided to use it as a graphical thing, and just like pixelate things out to suggest that there's something wrong or there's something missing.
That's one of the things I enjoyed about it, because there was a bit which was a part of like a photographic registration bit, which was a white square which appeared and disappeared, and it was almost like it was the nuts and bolts of making a film, but it's also like along with the pixelation, it was like the something that was quite gave it a textural thing. So it was almost like an art film as well. Some of the artists paint. There's films where people paint on the film, or add ink to the film, or scratch.
That's kind of where I started
that felt like that as well.
Yeah. No, I mean that visceral stuff. I mean that's where I started.
Yeah, and when you had the XTC footage where, there was the video kind of glitch, that all felt like all part of it as well.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, fold it all in. Anyway, shall I?
Yes, now we
okay. Cast your mind back. Sound for the future. I'll close my mind. In fact, to make it, so I'm not being in any way.
I'm dealing with it.
Yeah. First answer gets the tape, and the tape is on one side. It's the copy of the Hippies EP.
Oh wow.
On the flip side, it's Simon Fisher Turner's remix for it.
Oh yeah, How did you manage to convince Simon Fisher-Turner to do the...
I know, it's one of those who you know things I know through a friend.
Ah.
So it was easy.
Yeah.
He got paid.
Oh yeah, I understand that. But like,
He was great to it. It was very easy work with him. He was just like, I'll just send me stuff on. There you go. Okay, what is the name of the drummer in Generation Riot?
Shades.
You said Shades. You said Shades.
Cameraman.
There we go.
You are the winner because.
Oh.
My mum, Ruth Pendragon, refers to spoons in a kind, using a scientific term. She says that's very difficult to describe. He's like a kind of.
Three. What? Is it all three again? Oh, that's nice, isn't it?
Everyone thought it was easy, yeah.
Is it a cipher?
Be good if you went on the tapes.
Plant.
yeah.
Yeah, there was
Then
one
you give him
too.
that then, don't you, then tomorrow night.
It was dark matter.
Oh, yeah.
You would have said.
Let's have a think. Right, you're going to be quick on this one. What is my sister's name?
I know.
I can't say it because I know her.
Of course you can say it.
You said it's
Bristol's #1 Bebop Deluxe fan.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the answer.
Thank you. I really.
That was designed so that you would get that tape.
Well, I was like, I can't say it. I can't say it.
Well, you're very incredibly polite.
Thank you.
And this is also a planted question. What is the opening event at the Mockingbird cinema?
Like ever.
Yeah.
I haven't been here that long.
Oh.
What year would it have been?
Okay, what's your date of birth?
Goodness sake.
If you get that right, you get a cassette.
96.
There you go. Got a tape.
Yay!
That's a fun fact. Thanks for that. Yeah, no, that's great. I was just going to take his anyway.
You should have said, what's my sister's boyfriend's name? It's been straight.
So where actually is the hippies tape now? Where is it?
79.
Where is it? No, where is it?
In the back
Where's the
box.
actual tape?
Yeah.
It's in a box with all the other tapes I have, but that was properly dismantled in the film, so it's there with.
Oh, really? Oh, you did? Oh,
Yeah,
I thought that was
wasn't
a,
stunt
I went
tape.
for it. We had a stunt spoons, and we didn't have a stunt tape. I just went for it. I just thought, let's dismantle.
But you have to
this shit.
digitise it all, and like, you know.
Yeah, well, we digitise it, and then also I can get back into sticking it together if I really have to.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was important to have it done for real. You know.
Yeah.
For real.
It's
Real.
great because
For real,
punk and post-punk for me is a can-do attitude, and I thought that had got a can-do attitude. Before I came, I thought, I better just because that's the first time I've seen it. I know you sent me some links to it, but I thought I want to see it on the screen. And I thought, well, I'll just vibe up on it, and I thought I'll have a look at see some of the reviews, and the reviews don't reflect how brilliant that is.
Thank you for saying so.
No, honestly, because I looked and I thought, now I've watched it, they totally missed the point.
Yeah, and they get Spoons' name wrong.
Yeah.
That's unforgivable, right?
But they missed the point.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to come at it with an open mind, with a can-do attitude mind, and that's it. And the sort of people who don't get it, they don't deserve to get it.
Well, it reminds me, because I've obviously, I've had other features out, and I'd forgotten about the thing with reviews. And a review tells you way more about the person who's written it than it does about the work itself.
Yeah.
And I just got the impression that some of the reviews are written by someone who's like watching it on the phone there, they've got Twitter here, they're reading, chop suey or whatever. And they've not literally not watched
No,
it.
it's quite. I mean, without being, it's very approachable, but it's quite a dense film. There's a lot going on in there, and it's something I think you can return to and see more things in it. I know I'm convinced of that because there were little bits and it was like so quickly gone. You know? And I think it's why I said it was a slow burn is because it's one of those things that you can come back to again and again and dig into and get deeper into it and enjoy it. You know.
It's also a different experience, isn't it, seeing it in the cinema, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to on a, you know, handheld device.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Experience.
And I think it's one of those things that you'll just get deeper into. And I think if you just watch it and you're distracted, like you say, there's so much like you won't get it. You don't get it. And that was a great experience. And I know a good film when I see it, and that was a real good experience.
I think one of the challenges is, you know, the releases go out to reviewers and it's described to the film in a certain way, and that's, you know, the producers were involved in that description, so they're trying to put it across in a certain way to get interest.
Yeah.
So then the reviewer goes to it with a certain frame of mind, and then they think, oh, this person has failed to make the film that is described.
Yeah.
So if you went to the film and thought, imagined fiction, you'd think, oh, they've completely failed to make a fiction because it keeps going off onto all these things which are not fiction, and it keeps like referring to itself, and it questions itself, and then the director breaks down in the middle of it, and then
Well, I think it's a film for the future because I think it will open up. It will carry on opening up, and I think more people will come to it as over the years and approach it and dig into it. And I think it's probably presenting filmmaking in a way that's not looking back, it's looking forward.
Yeah, I would presume to say, and this is I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, but I think it's like it's a little bit ahead of its time.
I agree. I totally agree.
Not way, but
I totally agree. But there's also films in the past that I can see referenced in it, not necessarily consciously, but for me, you know, films that I've enjoyed in the past that are collaged and they're in there, and their time will come, and it will just get richer.
And that doesn't take away from it. Like saying it had like a punk sensibility, it felt a bit almost parts, a bit like, sort of a way like Dennis Hopper would make a film. As if it's like, not
Velvet Underground, Dennis Hopper.
And you can quote
but there's a bunch of stuff like that. It's still just that mindset of like, let's just try it. Not dismantle the film, but like everyone is just saying to do it in the same way. Let's just at least try something different. And he did a bunch of films like that. But it's just in that sense that it is ahead of its time in that sense, because that now isn't seen as a forward-thinking thing. I think that's why we don't see that so much. So in that sense, it is kind of coming around again and being like, well, why don't we just try and do this, or, you know, or try and recontextualise it.
I think stuff like that, we've been through this pandemic. I think if anything, you know, the world has tried to rush back to being normal, but it's not going to be like that. It's already like everything was thrown out, and I think there's a lot of struggling around to sort of settle. But this was made before all of that, and it's really interesting. I think that it's come out after all of that has happened, because it actually feels a bit like that time.
Yeah, there's
sort
a
of
bit
like just like
disconnected,
concentrated, disconnected, and you kind of want to do loads of stuff to sort of keep busy. It's a really interesting collision of just chance there.
But whose initial idea was it, like, back then to actually think, oh yeah, we'll form a band? Was it yours or collectively, or
well,
the hippies?
It was our mum. So right at the start of the film,
to give you some
hours ago, she says, form a band. Because another parent may have said, go and play football, or do a crossword, or go to a drama club. Or that was her first go-to thing, was like, stop sitting around singeing your legs by the gas fire eating toast. Because she'd have us for 3 weeks and she was on the dole, so it was like, what do you do with these 3 kids that are sort of knocking about? And she taught us to,
Well, that's a kind of
creative.
You obviously, like, we were aware of, like, you know, like post-punk music by then, but was that through your mum and your dad, or just
through? Well, for me, it was initially through Dad. He gave me the first Stranglers album on tape when I was far too young for it.
That's good.
I imagine it got to that song "Ugly." I was like,
Yeah.
He's a big Stranglers fan.
Well, no, we had a bit of a chat. We were already connected. The Men in Black.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
We can spot each other.
Yeah.
But both Mum and Dad, they were both really into music and both still are. So we're lucky. And plus my Uncle Phil, who's referenced briefly, you know, and a couple of Mum's friends recorded me stuff on tape.
So music was always around. Like,
Really young. I mean, I remember sitting up. We lived in Croydon, so it was like 75. I'd creep down, I sit at the top of the stairs, and they'd be listening to Bob Marley and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very much part of my.
Well, as he was leaping through the box of 7 inches, I was thinking, well, that looks
Yeah.
No, let's just have a quick look, you know.
What's the crate digger always?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Good.
We could take this conversation to the bar.
We could carry on.
Well,
Yeah, we might as well.
thank you
Yeah.
both.
Nick's joined.
Oh, Nick's just joined.
About 10 minutes ago, I think.
Well, Nick, can I just that if you're watching still, then just say thank you so much for all your work. This film is nothing without you. I mean, as people in this room will see, you're all over it. And watching it again, I was thinking, my God, how complex it is, and how you've like cross-referenced things, and everyone here tonight has seen that and enjoyed it and appreciated it. So sorry you can't be here, but don't go getting rabies, you fool.
Great, yeah, let's have a drink.
Yeah.
Spoon says thank you very much.
Very good.
I'll just. And that's a prize. Look at that. The prize winner's tape. Beautiful. Yeah.